Welcome. Stick around if you want to learn about the art and philosophy of beautiful movement mixed with evidence-based exercise science. We will be having tough and inspiring conversations with other coaches, experts, artists, and athletes. Our goal is to challenge myths, explore concepts, and engage in healthy debate as we dive deep with intrigue and curiosity. I'm your host, Hannah Deutscher. I've been teaching dance, Pilates, and yoga for over 2 decades. And what I've learned is that movement can be the joy that integrates us all together. When we can trust and express ourselves through our bodies, we are unlimited in our ability to change ourselves and our communities for the better. We, as movement teachers and coaches, have the power to help people experience this for themselves. Okay, everyone, let's dive in. Exchanging ideas and changing people's lives one session at a time. This is the Pilates Exchange. Welcome back to the Pilates Exchange, everyone. I am really glad that you're tuning in. Today, we're going to be talking about another contentious topic, and it is whether you should be teaching exercises you can't do yourself. There's a couple threads that have been going around, not only on Threads, but also on Facebook and Instagram, and teachers feel pretty strongly about this one. And so I'd just like to weigh in on the subject of what my experience has been and how my teaching has always been. So for those of you who are new to me, I've been teaching Pilates for just about 25 years now, yoga a little bit longer than that, and dance even longer than that. So long enough to have experienced some things on my side of the mat, let's say, long enough to see what works for me and my type of teaching, and long enough to see what works for different types of clients. Now, I'm going to just preface this by saying that my biggest belief is that there's no one size fits all on both sides of this. So for the student, the client that's in front of us, there are some people that are very visual learners. And in this case, it's going to be a lot easier for them if they see it once, and then they'll be able to do it. All the cues in the world aren't going to help those people. All the different ways that you could possibly explain something, if they are a deeply visual learner, seeing it once will make all the difference, and then it'll just go click, and then you get to save yourself a lot of words. The other side of things, there are people that, as a client, they don't need that at all. They need to feel it in their bodies. They need to experience it, and they need just very solid cueing, and you can get them to do anything without ever showing, without ever lifting a finger. And I think that's important to understand that from the client perspective, you're going to encounter all sorts of learning styles and learning needs. Okay, so I've worked with many people that are experiencing various, say, levels of blindness, of sight impairment. And in that case, it doesn't matter whether you could do the exercise and show the exercise or not. Your cueing needs to be on point, though. Those clients have been integrated into group classes. Some of them have taken my equipment classes before, but mostly in the mat classes. And it hasn't just been reduced to, you have to do a personal training if you can't see very well. In that case, we can take out the visual demonstration because, that clientele population isn't going to be able to see what you're doing. So cueing has to be on point. Now let's switch the flip. You know what I'm talking about. On the teacher side of things, there might be times where even if you could do the exercise, you shouldn't do the exercise. Let's start with the simplest. You're not warmed up. You shouldn't be showing that advanced exercise. You're not warm. The chance of you injuring yourself, especially if you are getting older like me, is relatively high. So why would you put your body in danger there? There's one. 2, case of injury. In my case, I had a hip replacement a couple years ago. There were many exercises that I wouldn't be able to show. There are things that I wouldn't be able to spot. And for my own personal safety. But I didn't feel like I needed to leave out exercises. I just needed to hone in on those teaching skills to make sure that my clients still got a great workout and a great experience at that time. Just because I went back to teaching, I want to say it was 4 or 5 weeks after the hip replacement, I was feeling relatively good, but definitely not well enough to be able to show exercises. What if the teacher is pregnant? you're 8 months into pregnancy and you still want to teach, you're not going to be showing these exercises. Like there's all sorts of reasons why you wouldn't want to show an advanced exercise or any exercise for that matter, depending on what's going on in your own body. So there's that side of the debate. I think for me, if we go back into those visual learners and say, okay, well, that is the reason why you would want to show an exercise, I would counter that to say, okay, but there's a lot of other ways to show an exercise and it doesn't have to be the teacher. Either a different client can already demonstrate for you. You might want to just there's hundreds of thousands of people on Instagram. If you can find the one exercise that you're looking for to demonstrate and it's in a 20-second clip and you show the person, then great. There it is. Like there's your visual aid that you've been looking for without having to put your body into it. I think picking out, those visual aids where you need them, I kind of think that those only completely visual learners are not that many. Or at least, how about, let's say this. In my experience, I've had very few of those people that can only learn from visual. I'm not saying that a demonstration isn't very helpful. It absolutely is. I'm just saying that there's a lot of different ways to get to that, which doesn't always have to include the teacher showing off the exercise, because that was the crux of the debate that's been going on. Several people have said that if you can't do the exercise, you shouldn't teach the exercise. In my dance career, I have had teachers that I've never seen them move outside of walking, like walking into the class and then leaving the class afterwards. A few of the best teachers actually that I've ever had were not able to dance anymore for various reasons. And they are still some of the most insightful people that I've ever taken class with. They have given corrections that have changed the trajectory of my career through the way that they were able to hone in on details of my own dancing, my own method, let's say my own movement patterns, and be able to recognize that and give me feedback on that, which was helpful for changing the way that I dance. Even just hearing those people in the room, being in the room with such insightful teachers, changes the way that you teach years later. So one of those is Alonzo King. Look up his teaching. He's just an incredible teacher the way that I've experienced him. Just one of many people. So then it begs the question, what is it? When we're cueing, what are we looking for? Maybe I should do a whole workshop on this. So hit me up on Instagram or send me a private message. Do you want a workshop just on how I'm thinking about cueing? If that would be helpful for you. So a lot of people would say, okay, if we are just talking about personal training, yes, that's easier to cue because it is that dialogue that we're always talking about. The dialogue that happens not only between the verbal of, okay, how does this feel? What do you think about this? The one-on-one to the client. Yes, that is easier. But I've taught big equipment classes, not 30 reformers, but like, a sizable amount of reformers, anywhere between 8 and 12, and it works just the same. I've taught classes, not reformer classes, but I've taught big classes of people. So in yoga, 50 or more. And I haven't had to demonstrate anything. I use my voice, my cueing for that. I've taught workshops with hundreds of people, and I don't rely on my physical representation. Sometimes yes, sometimes not. But it's about how you're explaining the information and what they're getting from that. So let's go back. Cueing. I think that it's important to think about how you're layering your cues. First is probably getting the person into the movement as cleanly and precisely as possible. Then maybe we are leaving some room for that feedback of where are they experiencing it? Where can we go deeper in that movement by offering different, say, adjustments or corrections in there? And then if you want to go a step further, we can layer that with other different sensations and different images on top of it. And that would just serve to deepen their own personal experience within the movement. Is all those extra fluffy stuff, is it necessary? No, but sometimes it's nice, but you need to know your client. Some of my, I would say, more analytical thinkers don't like that extra fluff. And others of my clients, they love that extra stuff. That's what helps them deepen the experience, that mind-body connection. Again, know your people. So what are we going to do when we have, let's go back into a reformer situation, because there's always the big, there's too many reformers in the room, or I can't teach that. They're not having a great experience, or it's dangerous. I don't think that teaching a big reformer class is dangerous. I think it's just honing in again on those cues and getting people to follow what you're doing. And I think there's a lot of different ways to do that. And it's about you commanding the room with confidence and setting up the exercise in a way that is going to be safe for everyone. So what are we talking about? Let's just pick one out. Standing front splits on the reformer. Okay, so if we were to take an exercise that has a little bit of a fear factor in there, and now we're teaching a big group class of reformer, and you wanted to introduce this exercise, I would slow it down like this. I would invite my whole class into this exercise and say, okay, we're going into an advanced exercise right now. Even if you know the standing front splits, I would like for you to stay with me step by step. I don't want to see anyone going over and doing the next part of it. The reason why is I think we can deepen our experience in this. So if you continue on past it, I'm going to ask you to stop. Great. So then I've set my expectations for that. Second thing. This exercise does have a little bit of a fear factor. So if during this exercise you ever feel like it doesn't feel right for your body, I'd like you to stop the exercise and wait for me to come over. Maybe you just need a spot, or maybe this exercise is not the right one for you today, and we've already done the prep work. Just continue to do the other exercise with the knee down. Great. So now we've also taken care of the people that might not feel safe enough in this exercise, or they need a little break. Great. Then what I would do is just take them up step by step. Say their left foot is on the foot bar, the right leg is extended back, and we've already lifted the hips. So we're now doing a lunge, and their hands are on the foot bar. Still, they're in the lunge, the right leg is back, it's fully extended. Next thing I would do is say, okay, everyone stay still. I would like to see if we can balance here. When you're ready, and only if you're feeling safe, we're going to lift the hands a few centimeters away from that bar and see what your balance feels like. If this is a bit too scary for today, bring your hands back to the bar and just hang out there and try to test that a few times. Perfect. You guys are looking great. I'd like you to stay right here as I go through the room and give everyone a little bit of feedback. Janet, can you stretch that back leg a little bit more? Great. Sarah, can you square your hips towards the front of the reformer, front of that foot bar? Perfect. Right hip comes front. Beautiful. Stay right there. Jack, can you stand up a little bit taller now? You're doing great. Shoulders down. Awesome. Joseph, I see that you put your knee back down. Great choice. I'm really proud of you for taking that route today. That's great. So back into the podcast part of this. You see that you can stop your class and have them do the exercise, standing right there. So you're just setting them up. They're safe. They're not just going back and forth on the reformer like wild people, right? All right, let's get back into it. So everyone is up there. Your hips are in a great place. Perfect. For those of you that want to, I'd like you to press into the bar with your left leg, your left foot, and see if you could slide the carriage back a few centimeters and come in towards the break. So now we're sliding back in front, and we're going to keep it relatively small in the beginning. See how that feels. Remember, at any point, you could put your knee back down or grab onto that bar. Then, depending on what you're seeing in the room, you can ask them to do it bigger, or you stop again and give some corrections throughout the class. So we're making the assumption of when you're teaching that advanced exercise, I haven't yet put myself on a reformer. There hasn't been any need to, because I've set it up step by step. I've probably done the version with the knee down on the reformer, the back knee down on the reformer first. and then brought it up to standing. And then I'm going to go back and forth a few times, making it small. And then if that feels good, then they're going to go even bigger. All right. So let's now go back into this idea of, is it necessary to show it? Yeah. The adage of a picture is worth 1,000 words. Yes. Is it easier to teach if you show it one time? Sometimes. Okay. If you're doing an advanced piece of choreography and lots of different steps to it, sometimes it just serves to confuse the people. Breaking it down step by step before is probably then in that case the easiest. Do I think that the teacher needs to be doing all the advanced exercises? No, I don't think so. I think that it is more important to be able to cue the exercise and give biomechanical feedback that helps them. So if we go back into our front split here, I might then stop the exercise. Everyone is taking a little bit of a pause. And then I say, okay, raise your hand if you felt this uncomfortable sensation during this exercise, if you felt an uncomfortable sensation in the front knee. Okay. So maybe a couple hands went up. Okay. Next time we do it, see if you can lift your hips up higher because maybe you're just too deep into that knee flexion. Let's try it again. See if that helps. Okay. Most of the time that's going to help the thing. Does anyone feel anything else that they want to explore with me? I feel this a little bit in my low back. Okay. Thank you for sharing that with me. What happens if you bring your hips up a little bit higher? Okay. What happens if the back knee is a little bit less straight? Does that feel like you can bring your hips underneath you a little bit more? Great. That solves it. All right. Perfect. So having the feedback, and looking at the person, like you can't make a correction. There's no blanket corrections for any of these exercises. There's ideas, like you look at any of these teaching workbooks that you get in your teacher training programs, and it's just a starting point. You cannot possibly list all of the different corrections you would have for every single exercise. You cannot also have a list of all the things that people could possibly be experiencing or sensing in their bodies. So it is then your job to dig a little bit deeper with that person. And it still doesn't require you to show the exercise. It requires you to have the skill set of asking good questions, having critical eyes there, and being in feedback with your client. There's many, many reasons that you wouldn't be able to do all of those advanced exercises. So I would like to be inclusive in that and really just lean into not all the people that can do all these advanced exercises are good teachers. I've experienced that many times over. So I'd rather you be focusing on those teaching skills. Now, the way that I believe is important to cue. There's many different layers of cues, but it's not only how you're cueing, how mechanically we're getting into the exercises, but also the atmosphere you're creating. Do the people feel safe? Do they trust you? Do they trust because of the structure that you've set up over not just in that one session, but over a longer period of time, that they're strong enough to be able to execute whatever that exercise is? And I've heard this is sometimes described as soft skills, okay, and making them feel safe and blah, blah, blah. I don't know if that feels a little bit degrading to these types of skills. They are essential. You are in the job communicating with people in sometimes one of their most vulnerable states. Okay, you're asking them to do things that are hard, they're scary, they are going to help them live a better life if we do our job correctly, in that they learn how to trust their body. They learn how to build strength and live a healthier lifestyle, like all of those things. So, and through appropriate goal setting, like all of those things. Yeah, maybe it's soft skills. I don't know. For me, it's essential. In that, nowhere in there is it essential for you to be able to do the advanced exercise. What is important is that you have enough practice under your belt, not only in teaching practice, but in movement, so that you can identify what is happening in the other person's body. There's a lot of different ways that we do that, but if you have a good understanding of how things feel in your own body and that constant practice that we're talking about, then you're able to help the person that's in front of you when you're teaching. Again, this is just my opinion out of my experience. And of course, there's people that are going to not agree with me, and that is absolutely okay. There's actually entire teaching brands out there, big brands, that don't agree with me, that if you can't do the advanced exercise, you're not going to get your teaching certificate. Yeah. And I think it's shame on them. But what's one lonely person over here in the podcast echo room? I don't know if I'm going to be making a big difference in there, but I am trying, my friends. So for any of you that are out there that were really doubting your teaching abilities because you weren't able to show the exercise for whatever reason, I alleviate that fear for you. You don't need to show it, at least in my version of teaching. I would love for you to let me know what you think. Reach out to me. Tell me how it's going. Tell me what you need. And I'm wishing you another week of wonderful teaching, everyone. Bye. Thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you enjoyed the conversation. A great cost-free way of supporting us and the podcast would be to give us a 5-star rating. You can also look down into the show notes and grab any one of the free resources for teachers. I hope to see you next week on the Pilates Exchange. Happy teaching, everyone.